You're listening to Behind the Mic Media, where stories come alive and conversations inspire. From actors and musicians to authors and creators, host Dawn Mack takes you behind the mic for exclusive interviews, real moments, and the stories that connect us all. Get ready. The show starts now.
Today on Behind the Mic Media, I'm joined by author Michelle Shocklee, whose new book, The Women of Oak Ridge, shines a light on the extraordinary and often unsung women who helped shape one of the most secret projects in American history. It's a powerful blend of history, emotion, and storytelling that you won't want to miss. Let's dive in. Well, hello and welcome, Michelle. It is an honor to have you here.
It is wonderful to be here with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, before we dive into this brand new novel you have out, The Women of Oak Ridge, I'd love for listeners to get to know you a little better. What first sparked your love for storytelling and ultimately led you to become an author?
My mom was an elementary school teacher. And my dad was a World War II veteran who loved history. So our home was filled with books, just absolutely filled every room. And so books have always been a part of my life. But I would say the time that really, I believe the seed was planted in my very young heart to become an author someday was the summer that my mom read Little Women to my sister and I. My mom was a school teacher, so she had the summers off. And so it was just the three of us. My older brothers weren't involved in this. And that book, because it was about a mom with these daughters and they were little women. And there I was with my mom and my sister. And we were just a group of little women. The characters in that book became very, very real in my imagination in a way that hadn't happened before. Of course, this was before I'd seen movies about that book or anything like that. And I could see Joe, I could see the sisters gathering in the attic, I could hear their laughter. And I really believe that's when God really planted the seed in my heart to someday become an author. It would take a while, and it would take a while before I would have the confidence to even dream that big. But I think that's when it really happened.
And that is amazing because, over the balance of your career, it has proven true that this was obviously the path that God put you on at such a young age, and it came to fruition. And you know as well as I that when He plants a seed, we don't have to worry about when it's going to happen. We just know it's going to happen in His time and way. And I think your career is a wonderful testament to that.
Thank you. And I believe that too. I didn't have the confidence to become an author right away. It took a while, but I had a lot of growing to do. I had a lot of maturing to do in life and in spirituality things. So it happened exactly the way it was supposed to.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations on your latest release. And for those just hearing about the Women of Oak Ridge, can you give us a quick overview of what the story is about and what inspired it?
Yes. So the story is set in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which during World War II was a secret city. And that was something very new to me, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But in 1944, as this government town was growing, they needed a lot of people to come and work in these big, humongous factories or processing plants that they were building in order to enrich the uranium for the atomic bomb. And tens of thousands of young women, because, all the men were off to wars, tens of thousands of young women came from all over the country to work there. And I have in the book, in 1944, this young woman from Kentucky, May, travels down to work at one of these plants. And the thing about when you came to work there, you weren't told where it was. You weren't told what your job was really going to be. You didn't know what you were doing, but they said they'd pay you well. So a lot of young women just came and worked there. And so May, in the course of the story, she becomes involved in all these deep, dark secrets, and they're really heavy, and they hang on to her for decades. I write split time or time slip novels, and so the other story is in 1979, and it's May's niece, Laurel, who is doing her dissertation in psychology, and she wants to write about Oak Ridge and the people who worked there during the war, and she thinks her aunt will be a great source. Well, it turns out that her aunt isn't willing to talk about any of it. So it's a story of secrets being kept in 1944 and hopefully being uncovered in 1979.
Oh my, that absolutely sounds like a fascinating read, and as I'm sure it is. And I love Split Time because you really get a chance to see two different perspectives, which kind of culminate into one amazing story. And I feel like that's what this is, not to mention all the historical elements to it.
Yes, I really enjoy writing dual time, split time novels because I get to dig into two different time periods. But the reason why I decided to write this book is because I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with Los Alamos just 30 minutes up the road. So I feel like I've known about the Manhattan Project and Los Alamos and the atomic bomb my entire life. One of my brothers worked at the Los Alamos laboratories for a long time, many years, and we took behind the scenes tours and saw things from the Manhattan Project. And the thing that I think solidified my belief that I understood the Manhattan Project was that my grandmother actually witnessed the very first atomic bomb flash. My grandparents and my mom, who was a teenager at the time, lived about 50 miles away from the Trinity bomb test site there in New Mexico. And on that morning, my grandmother was up. She saw the flash out the window. And so I felt like I knew the Manhattan Project. Well, then flash forward about, well, I won't tell you how many decades, but it was just about 3 years ago after we'd moved to Tennessee. And I was doing a book signing in East Tennessee, and an older woman came up to me, wanted me to sign one of my books. And before she left, she looked at me and she just had this look in her eyes like she knew something. And she said, "If you're looking for the topic for a new novel, my mom worked at Oak Ridge." Well,
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
know what she was talking about. I had, through all my education in New Mexico, Los Alamos, all of that, I had never tapped into the fact that Oak Ridge, Tennessee, was where all the uranium for the little boy bomb was enriched, and it had also been a secret city just like Los Alamos. So when I discovered that, I knew I'd have to write a book about it.
Oh, wow. Well, speaking of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, it has such a rich and complex history. And what was it like spending time there and doing on the ground research for the book?
I enjoyed that so much. Now, Oak Ridge is not a real exciting town. It's just a small town. It's about 20 miles outside of Knoxville. And there are still some historical buildings and sites that you can go see that I reference in the book that were there during the Manhattan Project. There are also some great museums. But for me, I just wanted to picture what life had been like during 1944 while we were there. And so I hope that readers who get a chance to visit Oak Ridge will do so, because it's just fun to see where those characters had been. In the 1979 story, I do reference a few more modern things. There's this place called Ed's Pizza, and of course I had to go and eat at Ed's Pizza if my characters were going to eat there.
Right.
And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would think, as an author and you're going into these towns to do research for a book that you're going to write, really learning about the setting and what makes it tick and how it's going to, come into play in your novel. That has got to be such a fun part of the whole, process ahead of when you write the novel.
Yes, it really is. And for this novel in particular, I was able to go back and see some of the things. In my other novels, the history is too far back. You can't really see a lot that happens. The only one that really, I would say is a little bit different, that's my novel, Count the Nights by Stars, and it takes place in Nashville during the Tennessee Centennial Exposition of 1897. And if anyone's ever been to Nashville, you may have seen the Parthenon, and that is part of that history. So you can still go see some things in some of the books. But this one, The Women of Oak Ridge, you can go to Oak Ridge and still see a lot of the things that were there during the war.
Yeah. Writing about women in wartime, it often brings up themes of resilience and sacrifice and secrecy. And which of those themes resonated most deeply with you as you wrote the book?
Well, as my parents were part of that generation, my aunts were part of that generation, I really wanted to honor them. The men and women have obviously just made sacrifices that a lot of us in today's modern world can't even really understand. And so that's what I wanted to portray through May's character, that these young women who didn't know where they were going, didn't know what they were doing, couldn't talk to it about anybody. They had all this heavy secrecy burdened on them throughout those years that they were there, but they kept persevering. And one of the things I do bring out in the novel is later when these women were interviewed, like in their, 70s and 80s, and they're talking about it, all of them mention the heaviness of the secret. All of them mention that it was really hard to deal with that kind of thing. And so I just wanted to honor them as I wrote the book.
Yeah, I mean, and that's probably, I would think, somewhat of a more of a difficult challenge than most people would think, because trying to capture that in its most authentic form and having that conveyed to readers so they see it as genuine, I think can be quite challenging for authors sometimes.
Yes, it sure can. And one of the things that really helped me in writing this book are those interviews that were done. There were videos, there were transcripts, and so I watched a lot of them. I don't dozens and dozens of them, and just so appreciated what those people who experienced that had to say. So I definitely wanted to put a lot of that into May's character.
Well, many authors say that their characters talk to them while writing the story. And did you find that to be true with any of the women in your story? And if so, who spoke the loudest or made the deepest impression on you?
Oh, I would definitely say May, because I could just really envision her as a real person. 'Cause I tell my husband all the time that my characters really are real people,
Yeah,
but they're really not. They're real people in my mind.
right.
But I do want readers to experience what the character is experiencing. And so it's very important to me to put in those personal details that I learned from actual people who were there during that time.
Well, as readers, dive into this novel and they finish on the last page, what do you hope that they take away, both in terms of the story and its historical significance?
I hope they take away a real appreciation for that generation of people. As we get further and further away, we're 80 years now past when the World War II ended and the bombs were dropped. As we get further and further away, I think people forget what that generation experienced. And so I hope maybe younger readers might come away with a new appreciation for their grandparents, their great grandparents, what they went through.
History is always going to be a forever mainstay, and it really is what I think helps shape our nation and our world in a lot of ways. And it's always, I think, inspiring for me, especially when I dive into historical fiction and read, or see documentaries. It is always fascinating to learn about the way things used to be, or the way places, how they were designed, how they worked, and all the inner workings that you wouldn't know unless you read it or saw a documentary about it.
Right, right. And that is one of the things I've always loved about historical fiction. I am a reader as well, and I always turn to historical fiction novels. And I'm like you, I love documentaries. I am a history nerd, and I just love digging into history. And I love sharing it because I do try to find things that aren't written about a lot for my novels. And so that was one of the things I really wanted to share with people, because if I was someone who grew up with Los Alamos, the atomic bomb, and all that right there in my, first 20 years of my life, but still didn't know about Oak Ridge, there's probably a lot of more people out there who don't know about Oak Ridge. So I was really happy to share this history.
Yeah, I feel like your books in particular give readers an opportunity to explore areas and places in time that they wouldn't otherwise know about, and may inspire someone to dig deeper and possibly look at other places that are similar, with themes and so forth. So, in terms of the women of Oak Ridge, how did this book challenge you or change? Did it change you in any particular way as an author?
I don't know that it changed me, but I don't know that I even had a challenge. I think this was probably the most fun I've had writing a novel in a while. Of course, I love all my other books. I love all my other characters, but a lot of them really do challenge me. This book was everything was new to me. It was a whole new learning experience. I learned everything about Oak Ridge that is in this book within the last 3 years. And so that has been just really fun. One of the things that May does carry, she carries that heavy secret. And that is something that I think all of us can probably relate to in some way. Maybe we're not going to have as heavy secret as she's going to have. But the way I had her handle it, I hope is something that people can relate to and apply to their own lives.
I think that's wonderful. And I feel like anytime you can read a book and you have takeaways that come from that stay with you, it is inspiring in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I find that too at myself as a reader, and that's certainly what I want to do as an author.
Okay, well, Michelle, I'm excited. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet. I am looking forward to reading the book, and because I love historical fiction, and I especially love the split time. Anytime I read something with that, I just love how you're learning about the past while it meets the present, so to speak, and how it all kind of comes together. And so, in that regard, I have to ask, what's next for you? Are there any upcoming projects or stories in the works that you can give us a sneak peek at, or is that to come?
I can tell you just a little bit about it. I just actually finished the manuscript and sent it to my editor on Monday of this week. And
Wonderful.
so there's not a lot that I can tell you about the story because who knows, it might change through the
Yeah.
editing process. But it is going to be set in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And if readers are not familiar with that, Hot Springs, Arkansas in the 1920s and 1930s was basically a little Las Vegas. There was illegal gambling, there was, illegal alcohol because it was during Prohibition. Gangsters hung out there. And the town had started out because of the hot springs. Beautiful hot water just flows out of the mountain right there in Hot Springs. Just gallons and gallons, thousands of gallons a day. And so these big, beautiful hot bathhouses have been built there. They're historic. And they're on the national park land. I think there's 8 of them. And so that was what drew people there in the first place. But then the illegal gambling came. And so I have visited that town a couple of times, and I think it's just such a cute town and such a fascinating history. I thought I would set a book there.
I think that is wonderful. And that, as little as you shared about the upcoming novel, I know it's going to be great. Just to hear how, Hot Springs, Arkansas is, I think, a fascinating town anyway. And that prompts me to ask you, how do you decide what town you were going to capture in a novel?
It's going to be a place that I'm familiar with. I want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to breathe it.
Hmm.
And that's what I want to put into my books. And so my first 2 novels are Texas novels because we were living in Texas at the time. I wrote a novella that's in New Mexico, which is where I grew up. And then the rest of my novels, the last 5 have been set in Tennessee because that's where we live now. And so I always choose places that I am familiar with, that I can see and do the research, on the ground a lot of the time. So that's how I choose them.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you so much for being my special guest today. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you about your brand new book, and I am looking forward to reading it, as I know many who may have read it and who have yet to read it are looking forward to it as well. And so thank you so much for chatting with me about it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here, and I hope you enjoy the story when you read it.
Okay, well, thank you, and wishing you much continued success as you go forward.
Thank you very much.
Take care. My thanks to Michelle Shocklee for joining me today and sharing the inspiration behind the Women of Oak Ridge. Be sure to grab a copy wherever books are sold and follow her online for updates on what's next. You can catch this and all of our conversations on Behind the Mic Media, available on all streaming platforms and at behindthemicmedia.com. Until next time, I'm Dawn Mack, wishing you a wonderful day, and I'll see you again real soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Behind the Mic Media with your host, Dawn Mack. Be sure to follow the show online at behindthemicmedia.com and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, Threads, and TikTok, all at Behind the Mic Media. And don't miss our YouTube channel, where you can watch all of our interviews and exclusive moments. Make sure to like and subscribe so you'll be notified whenever a new episode drops. Until next time, thanks for listening. And remember, the best stories are the ones shared behind the mic.